Good afternoon. It's a pleasure for us to welcome you to Between Two Pulpits. My name is Bill McConnell. I am the Interim Director of Special Offerings and Appeals for the Presbyterian Mission Agency. And with me is my colleague from the other side of the country, Renee Myers. Renee, would you please introduce yourself?
Certainly. Thank you, Bill. As Bill said, I'm Renee Myers. I work as a mission engagement advisor for the Presbyterian Mission Agency in the western part of the United States, and joining you here from Southern California.
It's great to be with you, Renee. Renee and I are colleagues, and it's wonderful to see folks that we don't live close together, so we're able to communicate in this way and to join together in talking about some of the great work that's being done. This week, we're talking about by the Presbyterian Hunger Program. As you know, we are in the midst of One Great Hour of Sharing, in the One Great Hour of Sharing season. And as your congregations are looking for opportunities to take that offering, we appreciate your engagement, we appreciate your prayers, and we appreciate the financial support. That financial support goes to support 3 ministries within the mission agency. First, the Presbyterian Hunger Program, then Presbyterian Disaster Assistance, and third, Self-Development of People, all very important programs in the mission agency. Now I'd like to bring in one of our colleagues from the Presbyterian Hunger Program, and I'd like to introduce Valery Nodem. Valery is Associate for International Hunger Concerns with the Presbyterian Mission Agency in the Presbyterian Hunger Program. And Valery, we want to welcome you to Between Two Pulpits. I think this is your first time on this broadcast, and we do appreciate your time. And want to open the conversation up to you. So tell us what you do. What is your role within the Presbyterian Hunger Program?
First of all, thank you very much for having me here, Bill. I work with the Presbyterian Hunger Program on international hunger concerns, which means building relationship with partners globally. We're working in 26, 27 countries altogether, and my main role is to relate to international partners, support the work that they do. Build relationship, but also connect them to the church. So in my role, I very often travel, spend time with partners, discuss the work that they do, discuss ways that their organizations can become stronger. But I also bring back a lot of stories here in the US and look for ways to connect people in the US with the work that our global partners are doing overseas. I've been doing this work with the Hunger Program for 11 years now, and with the church globally for over 20 years.
Wonderful. So talk to us, please, about some of the things that are on your front burner right now. Where's the work that you are most focused on right now? And I'm realizing the needs are great, but where is your primary focus right now?
I think most of our partners are still, coming back from 2 very difficult years of COVID-19. As you probably know, it has, just slowed down the world economy. Here in the US, but globally, it was pretty much like economic shutdown everywhere. And it's really, really hard to come back from that. The UN, the World Bank, and a lot of other international organizations are talking about poverty coming back and being a lot stronger than what it has been in the last couple of decades. We started the year with more than 200 million people, who are going to become a lot poorer than they were last year. So we're hearing a lot of partners just talking about, needs to bring communities back to where they were before. We're also really concerned because, even though COVID really slowed down the world economy, unfortunately, in many corners of the world, it did not stop the guns. So civil conflicts have been continuing pretty much the same. We're all following what's happening in Ukraine right now. Absolutely terrible. But we're also seeing that the impact of a crisis like the one in Ukraine doesn't stop in Ukraine. It's affecting the whole world, including all of us here. I don't know if you have put gas in your car in the last couple of weeks, and it's just terrible. So we're seeing the same conflict. We're just hoping this is an opportunity for a lot of us here to understand what really happens when you have this kind of conflicts around the world, because the same has been happening in Yemen for more than 5 or 6 years, in South Sudan, in northern Nigeria, in Cameroon. A conflict never really stops, just like in the place where it's happening. The effects are always really, really big. So we're also working with people in those countries. Most of them are asking to help them to bring these conflicts to the map as well, so that they're not forgotten. But at the same time, to work on providing what the communities that are affected really need to get back on their feet. Climate change, intense droughts are also affecting people pretty much all over the world right now. And a lot of communities have a harder access to water, are having a harder time producing the food that they need, which is also fueling a lot of displacement, and at the end resulting in a lot more hunger and poverty. So it looks like at the beginning of this year, wherever you're looking, it looks really stressful. The needs are really, really huge.
Valery, you're talking about the things that are going on around the world and those things that we see in the news right now, like Ukraine, but there's also, as you mentioned, conflicts and famine and need that are in places that aren't in the news right now. What could you offer to congregations for ways to engage so that they can understand how what we're doing here locally impacts things globally and help to be agents of change in that? Is there something you could offer?
Right. I think I've been discussing a lot in the last couple of weeks, and I think I'm just going to repeat a big part of what I said earlier. If we look at the conflict in Ukraine right now, because that's been in the news day in and day out, my hope is that it helps a lot of our congregations to understand that it's not just about Ukraine right now. The same conflict that have been happening everywhere have been affecting us. The only difference sometimes is that they haven't been as much in the news like this one is. And I think to also be able to see our brothers and sisters in other places as really connected to us, and not people that we want to go do things for, because what's happening over there, we have seen it right now, it's really touching us. And we need to find some ways to really build global solidarity. For me as a Cameroonian living in the US, I feel like a lot of what I see in my own country is happening in my backyard here in the US. The same system that is creating hunger and poverty in South Sudan, in Cameroon, in Ukraine, we have that system here at home. And one way to really take it apart would be to work together. People in the US, a lot of congregations here, hand in hand with people overseas, to really try to tackle that systems from wherever we are.
Well, and I'm really intrigued by you're talking about a systems approach, that we're not just talking about sending pallets of food, but we're talking about the systems that or I think it's often said, it's wonderful to provide food for someone, but then the second question is, why do they need that food in the first place?
Right.
Could you talk a little bit about the way you work to address those kinds of systems?
Yeah, I think that's actually the mission of the Presbyterian Hunger Program. The first part of our mission is to alleviate hunger around the world. So work with people who are hungry now and try to provide them with what they need. But another very important part of our work is to ask that question that you were just mentioning, Bill. Why are these people hungry? What is causing hungry? And the more you ask the why question, the more you get into systems, the more you get into structure that are built into our society and that are really creating a lot of problems to communities around the world. Part of my job is to coordinate within the Presbyterian program an initiative called Joining Hands, which actually brings people from different countries around the world with Presbyterians together to ask that question: why are people hungry? And if you ask the question, then you start understanding that, oh, okay, we, in our quest, to find resources like oil and gas, we go to countries where sometimes we impoverishing people by, polluting the environment, polluting their water. A lot of companies here are buying land overseas to produce more food, and that's also pushing farmers away from their lands. And initiatives like that are bringing people in the US and people in those countries together so that they can look at this system. It's really important to provide the food that people need today, but it's as important, if not more important, to try to stop the chain and really address those systems of oppression.
Well, and I know you've also got a webinar coming up soon that in cooperation with other ministries that are working with One Great Hour of Sharing, that and I know you're focusing on Nigeria in this particular webinar, but could you tell us a little bit about this and how we can plug in and what sort of discussions you're looking forward to having?
Absolutely. About 4 years ago, the UN declared a famine. First time you had a famine in 4 different countries at the same time. Like northern Nigeria, Yemen, South Sudan, and Somalia. So 4 years ago, we started building relationships because we hadn't done work in northern Nigeria until that point, with a group called CISCO. That's the civil society group working on poverty alleviation, but also working on advocacy campaigns in Nigeria. What happened in Nigeria is that, there's a group, you probably heard about Boko Haram, the 100 girls who were kidnapped many years back and who still haven't been, given back to their families. They are attacking a lot of communities who are fleeing their villages, going to the border to Cameroon, communities that are already facing a lot of poverty. And Cisco has been working with them for a number of years now, making sure that when people are coming back and need to rebuild their lives, Cisco is there to support women, to support children, to support the elderly by providing them with the tools that they need to rebuild their societies. But also, they've been doing a lot of work in a dangerous and really hard context to work with the government in their countries and really asking them to take these issues seriously, putting climate change on the national agenda, but at the same time fighting so that there's more security for communities in northern Nigeria. We think the webinar will be really important because it will help to see the context in which some of our partners are doing this important work. Very, very difficult context. But it's also really important to, I think, to really understand what communities go through. I don't remember if, a lot of us here in the US, even historically, if we have had a famine, if we had had people dying of starvation. It's not great. And the UN is talking about famine possibly coming back in that part of the world. So we just really hope it will be a really good time to learn about what important work some of our partners are doing.
Excellent. Renee, I believe you're okay. I saw you come off mute. So Valery, one of the things we do ask in these Between Two Pulpits broadcasts is for our guests to look forward to this Sunday's lectionary readings from the Revised Common Lectionary. And if you were preaching this Sunday, or if you were teaching this Sunday, to take a look at those readings and give us an idea of how you would approach them, some thoughts that you might have for them.
Yeah, I think if I was to preach next Sunday, I think I will use the Psalm 126. Um, Psalm 126 talks about, when the Lord restores the fortunes of Zion, um, and how a lot of people who have sowed in tears will reap with shouts of joy. I think that spoke very strongly to me. You know, as I travel around the world, just to also see how much people, like a lot of people who have lost everything, how their faith in God is strong. I'm always amazed to see the level of hope, faith, trust that people have put in God, and how they express joys in ways that most people having more material things have forgotten. It's just amazing to work and to be with communities that build and rebuild and rebuild, each time believing that it will be the last, but yet continue to build and hope that they will just find that place where they finally settled, and when things are happening the way that they envision. And even when people don't, a lot of these communities, even when they can't see signs of hope, they still believe strongly that something bigger is coming. That song spoke very strongly to the work that we do and to what I see as I travel and work with communities around the world.
Yeah, Valerie, that reminds me of a few years ago, I was able to visit South Sudan and met with some women who gathered for Bible study in a Presbyterian office, and how determined and committed those women were to having a school in the refugee camp where they were living, because that was the future. What you speak about, the dedication and the committed nature of people, that we could learn a lot from, to come together and build a better future.
I totally agree. And I think, when I traveled to South Sudan last, right before the COVID, I visited the community as well. And they've been growing food pretty much on like hard rocks. Like when we're talking about drought, you will get there and just see rocks. And you're like, how can they do this? And I remember a lady in the community just saying, water is going to come here one day. And just like continuing to do it day in and day out, and you can't stop for a second. Like you can't help but being like, how can she believe, this is going to change? But I feel like that's the kind of hope, that's the kind of trust, that's the kind of belief that I feel like I see with a lot of folks that we're working with.
All right. Well, I'm going to pass it off to Renee for our final question.
Valery, we like to ask all of our guests, and in fact, I was a guest once and they asked me this question. But what is your hope for the church?
That's a huge question. I think my hope is that the church continues to ask the question about who is our neighbor and what are we doing with our neighbors. If the church is like that, we're able to see each other, understand how we all interconnected, and a church that doesn't do for others, but instead really walk with people. I pray that we continue to ask hard questions. I pray that we continue to go deep down, look for root causes of problems that affect our society, rather than simply address the consequences of these. I feel like the church is asking a lot of these questions. I think we still have a lot of work to do. And that's my hope and my prayer for the church.
All right. Well, Valery, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your work. We continue to pray for you in your work and for the work of the Presbyterian Hunger Program. Thanks so much for your insights. And I'd like to close us out with a prayer. This prayer actually is from the Feasting on the Word worship companion that I found particularly appropriate for Sunday, based on the lectionary texts. But if we could all join together in prayer. God, our creator, God, our sustainer, we pray for the needs of the world. May peace invade places of war and justice crowd out oppression and cruelty. Protect soldiers and citizens alike from harm's way and make all conflict cease. Bless leaders of communities, states, and nations, that they may speak the truth and work with others for the common good. Pour out healing on the earth itself, depleted and injured by our careless consumption and intentional greed. Comfort those devastated by natural disasters. Strengthen those supplying shelter, food, and aid. Amid the chaos of this world, your Spirit intercedes with sighs too deep for words. We thank you, God, for you are making all things new. Amen.
Yeah.
So Valery, thank you so much. Renee, thank you so much for joining me as co-host. And we look forward to further conversations. So we hope everyone has a great afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thanks a lot.